Hello, this is Learn to Love Yourself or Serenity with Rosie. And today's topic is my out-of-body experience. But first, I want to take a deep breath, calm my energies, and ask my spirit guides and angels to be here while we have this conversation. So, it actually started the day before I had my out-of-body experience. I had been sick. We had a fridge in our kitchen at the time, and I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure we had just become non-members, and so we didn't get to associate with a lot of other people and things, and so we were supposed to be secluded, I guess you would say. I don't know if I don't remember if we were actually non-members now or shortly became non-members. But anyway, so we we were basically trying. There was 3 moms in the house besides myself and their kids, and at the time I was also being a caretaker over another child who was a non-member that was not my child, the one I born, but they were there with me because they had been disciplined or something at home, so they couldn't be in that house because they were being naughty, I guess you would say. Anyway, and so I had this extra child there as well, but we had living in this house, whoever built it, I'm not sure exactly what they had in mind, but they had built the pantry, the walls, and then they put this fridge in there. And then they framed it in and put a door on it. And so, but the fridge was wider than the opening now. And so we had the fridge go bad, and we tried just leaving it unplugged, and it would go moldy, and which was bad. People react to mold pretty good, most people. And so we finally, eventually figured out, and this was part of that experience of learning what would work, but we eventually figured out that if we kept the fridge just set on a low setting, so it was a little bit cold, and then we washed it every once in a while out with bleach, we didn't have to deal with the mold. But if we just shut it off, for some reason, it still had mold. And I don't know. I don't understand if it's because of the enclosed space or what. I don't know. But so we were just trying to make the best of the situation that we were in. And I don't remember what number of caretaker this was that I had. It was just one of them. I had several. And because women in the church can't exist without being under a man of some kind. Because, I don't know, I guess you have to have somebody to tell you what to do. But anyway, so I had gotten sick because we initially had cleaned out this fridge, and I didn't want the other mother, one of the other mothers, to get really sick because she had a really bad reaction to mold, and I didn't want her to have to deal with that. So I opted to clean it out, and I was going to just try to take care of myself the best I knew how. And so shortly after, though, I ended up with bilateral pneumonia, and I ended up on antibiotics, and I actually thought I was getting better, but then I started to get worse. And before this, I had actually, been diagnosed with asthma, and um, I had had some issues there. And so I, had this really bad cough. And my lungs are such, when I was 18, I got pneumonia really, really bad. And I actually healed my sensor that tells you when you can't breathe. And so I can't really tell. I would get a really bad headache, or there's other things I look for. But at the time, I was still learning what or how to tell. But one thing is I had lost my voice, and so I was hoarse basically, and had been since I had gotten pneumonia. And so I'm just trying to go along life, doing the best I can. And one night, I was talking to one of the other moms, and I think we were talking about this other child that was there because he was having a rough time, and we were trying to figure out what to do to help him. And I don't remember exactly if I had this other feeling that night. I don't remember exactly. I just remember I was talking to her, and then all of a sudden it was like, I don't know, I wasn't seeing around me. I just heard this really loud ringing sound that was just so loud, and it was just this constant tone, and it was like doo, like really, really loud. And I remember thinking, I was freaking out, and I was like, this is so loud, it's gonna deafen me. And I was just really freaking out in myself. And um and I remember there was this calm, peaceful voice, and it would say, it's okay, it's okay, just relax and rest a minute. And so I was like, oh. And I just remember and then I got woke up by this other mother shaking me, and she was freaking out, and apparently had called the ambulance because I had just stopped breathing, and mid sentence. So I freaked her out pretty good. Um, and at the time, it so happened that the caretaker I had was actually a paramedic, and he was on ambulance duty. So he came, and I don't exactly understand all the hangups. I'm sure he was doing the best he can. I don't know. But I went out there, and he said he listened to my lungs, and my lungs were clear. And so he couldn't figure out, and I didn't seem to be wheezing or any of the typical signs of asthma. But my blood pressure was super, super high. It was like 250 over 150. And my lungs are such that I will basically, as one of my primary care doctors explained it to me, he said, when I was 18, basically I had reverted back to how it was to be a child. And so I'll be going along, and then I'll just basically collapse from not breathing, and I won't know. And which I have experienced several times. And he was right. But this was kind of one of those experiences where because I didn't know, because I couldn't tell, I couldn't breathe. Besides, I was hoarse and had lost my voice. And um, and so I don't know. It was just really, really weird. But my SATs will be 98, 99, but my respiratory rate will be high. And so you have to pay attention to more things than just your SATs, because people are like, oh, our oxygen's fine. And then I would collapse. And so it's crazy. And I'm sure they were trying to make sense of it all. But it was decided that I was developing high blood pressure. It just all set in. Tonight I was getting high blood pressure, and now I had high blood pressure. So they gave me medication for high blood pressure, which is actually contraindicated. You don't give high blood pressure medication to someone with respiratory problems. but I'm a confusing case, so understand. Anyway, then they left, and I don't remember anything too eventful happening. I remember the next day I had gone and taken my kids down to Hurricane to see their dad, because he, at that time, he had left the church. And so I would take him down to see him so that he could see them. And I remember on the way home, I just fighting to stay awake, and just, it was just weird. My head hurt so bad that I didn't understand what was happening. And I remember after I got home, I went to this mother's room, and I just was like, my head just hurts so bad. And so she's like, well, just lay here on there was a bed in her room, an extra bed. And so she's like, just lay here for a minute. And so I just remember just laying there. And then I remember that I was sitting there, and then all of a sudden she starts shaking me, and I was like, what? And she's like, you're not breathing. And so I was like, what? And so I remember trying to breathe, and I remember trying to puff up my belly to breathe. And that is hard. That is hard work. If anybody's ever done it, it is very, very hard. And so I'm trying to breathe, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm getting tired, I can't. And I just remember all of a sudden, it was weird. It was like this, and the only way I know how to explain it is when you pour hydrogen peroxide on blood, how it all foams up. That's how it felt, except for I could feel it literally. It would start, and I would feel it like it would go, like it would start at my core, and it would just go to all my limbs. It was just like this wave of foamy, bubbly something. And now I actually understand that it's when carbon dioxide floods your system. It can give you that sensation. But I just remember that happened, and then I would have this really, really, that same really high pitched sound. And I was just like, oh my goodness, I am going to be deaf. This is too loud. And then I would, start freaking out in myself. And then the same calm, quiet, peaceful voice would say, it's okay. It's okay. Just relax and rest a minute. And so I was like, okay. And then I would relax, and then I didn't remember anything. And then she was shaking me, waking me up because I had stopped breathing. And I don't know how many times this happened. It happened over and over and over. And I guess she was in contact with our caretaker. And it was just really, I don't know, it was hard and scary. But the confusion that they talk about that you have with low oxygen is so real. It was like you didn't know if you were coming, you were going, what was happening, what you were doing. You didn't have a clue what was actually going on. And so I just remember that she was like, oh, well, our caretaker's going to be here and he wants to look at you. And so I just was like, okay, he can come look at me. I don't care. Because I was just like tired. And so then she's like, oh, and she comes back in the room, and she's like, we have to, or I don't know, maybe she called him. She's like, we have to go out to the living room. And I was like, okay. And I remember trying to sit up. And that's when I realized that I had no control over my arms and legs anymore. Like there was no muscle tone, literally. My muscles were just mush. And I was just like, okay, this is bad. This is really bad. But yet, I don't know, because I wasn't aware enough. And now that I look back, and I think it was a lot more scary than it was at the time. And I don't know, it was just the strangest feeling. But with her help and my daughter's help, they basically dragged me out to the couch in our living room. And I remember they got me out there, but apparently he had gotten upset for something or left. I don't know. He had left. And so we were just, I was laying on the couch for a minute. And then I remember I was so tired, and I felt, it's just this weird feeling that I felt. And I was just like, if that happens again, don't let me die. I was telling the other mom this, and she was like, I won't, you know. And so I was kind of freaking out a little bit. And um, then I don't know. I just I remember then all of a sudden, next thing I knew, I was having that bubbly feeling again, where it was just, you know, everything. And then I had, the next thing was that ringing sound, really, really loud in my ears. And I was just kind of freaking out, you know, and I was just like, because it just felt like it was like a nightmare going over and over and happened over and over and over. And I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. But, you know, it was the same thing, just calm and peaceful. It's okay. It's okay. Just relax and rest a minute. And so I was like, okay. And then relax and rest. And I don't know how long had transpired, but next thing I know, I'm standing over by the front door, like it right here. See, I was laying on the couch over here, and I was standing in front of these steps that went up, and my daughter was actually sitting on those steps. And I remember looking at her, and she was just bawling her eyes out. And I was just like, that was just the first thing. I was just like, oh, wow, she's sad. But it was weird because I knew that I was laying on that couch, but I knew I was standing there. And so I don't know. But I remember seeing her crying, and I remember looking over and seeing the other mother walking around over by the couch, and she was just wringing her hands crying. And I just was like, everybody is really sad. You know, what am I supposed to do to help these guys? And I remember kind of looking around, and but it was weird. You know, some people say when you die or have an out of body experience, then you go to heaven or you see hell or you talk to God or whatever. I didn't see anyone other than them, those two. I didn't see any other people. It was the only thing that was different is I knew that I wasn't in my body, and um, I was sad that everybody else was sad. And it was like the walls of the house were like there was a really, really thick fog. And so it was just light everywhere around. So there was no walls to the house. And so it was just really weird. But and I just remember thinking, you know, taking it all in, wondering what I could do to help them feel better. And then that same voice that normally was all kind, peaceful, and quiet and calming, that same voice was, it was like, it literally felt like the earth shook. And he was like, Rosie. And it scared me so bad. I I felt like I jumped, and I was, I guess at that time I started breathing again, and I was back in my body. And I thought I jumped off the couch, but they said I just barely raised my head a tiny bit. But it literally felt like life was driven into me. And it was very, very interesting. But it was this experience happening to where I knew if I stayed in that church, I would die. Because I can't say it's anyone's fault, but being misguided and being all, you have to be priested and so many times I was told, and I've heard other women being told, well, you just need to get a better spirit, or your inspiration is not of God, or I could sit here all day and tell you all the different excuses that we were told. And being a woman, and had multiple caretakers, and women don't have any, you're basically just a servant. You don't really have choices. If you are sick and you try to tell your priesthood head or your caretaker, and he doesn't think that you're really sick and he thinks that you're making it up, you're making it up. And so there's not really any justice. But I remember, I don't know, when I first woke up, I was so grateful for the paramedic, because I had run ambulance with all of these people. And I was so grateful for the paramedic who was there, because, I woke up and I had a big old oxygen mask on, non-rebreather mask. And I remember my caretaker at the time came in, and he was quite angry, and he was just like, and I guess he had remarked to one of the other moms that he thought I was making it up. And I'm like, okay. But, they told me that I had basically stopped breathing for about 10 minutes. And I don't know, that's what I was told. But I don't think people can hold their breath for 10 minutes. And I'm not saying this to cast judgment. I'm simply just telling the story. But I was so grateful to that paramedic who was there that day. And even though I never saw him walk in, he had to have walked right through my shadow or my soul or whatever it was of me to come in. And I guess he had said Rosie, and maybe which I found out later, it was one of my guardian angels that was mimicking his voice or something. But it's just a very, very interesting experience to have. But I remember he was like, so you want to go to the hospital? And I remember thinking, well, absolutely not, obviously, but I probably need to. And I remember my caretaker was quite upset, and he's like, whatever she wants to do. But needless to say, I did get better. But that was my experience, my out-of-body experience. And again, I'm not telling the story to cast blame on anyone. I'm just telling the story because it's what happened, at least what I remember from my own perspective. And I just remember being so grateful that paramedic was there, because it felt like I had an advocate, that he was on my side and I was going to be okay if he was there. Because all of us want to feel safe. We all want to feel like we're taken care of. And at that time, that was needed. And so I just want to let all of you know, you're needed. You're wanted. You're cared for. And, I remember even in the hospital later, because they wanted to get arterial blood gas to see how bad off it was. And I remember they're like, well, we're going to take off the oxygen for a minute. And I remember freaking out, because I'm like, I don't want you to take off the oxygen, because I don't want to go through that again. And then I was like, and they're like, well, we can't really tell how bad off you are unless we do this. And I remember thinking, okay, and going through the whole fuzzy, foamy bubbly feeling, and then the whole ringing in my ears. But I knew I was somewhere that I was going to get help. And I woke up to them slapping oxygen back on me, you know, and because they were like, oh, this needle's going to hurt. I didn't feel the needle at all. So, but I know the doctor, when he walked in, he was like, so you're supposed to be brain dead. People don't, how did you start breathing again? And I kind of tried to tell him the story, but he wasn't understanding. And I couldn't make him understand what actually happened. And he's like, well, something made you start breathing again because your lungs didn't ever clear collapse either. And so I think the paramedics said when they got there, my sats were 60 something. But it's just a wake up call for all of us. And the doctor, he's like, well, I gave you 6 months to live. And so I definitely feel very fortunate. And he told me I was supposed to be brain dead. And he's like, why aren't you? And I says, how do you know I'm not? He didn't like that very well. But my thing is none of us know. There are no guarantees in life. And it's very sobering. But it was this experience that I knew if I stayed in that church, I would die. And so, as scared as I was of leaving the church, this experience gave me the courage. I mean, it's pretty easy when you're faced with death or another choice, you're going to take the other choice. And so I want you to all know that you are loved. You are needed more than you know. And there is a bigger plan for all of us. And I'm just grateful every day that I have this opportunity to interact with you. Because you guys have taught me more than I can ever explain, or I'm just so grateful. And I'm grateful to be able to have this experience with you, this life experience, because I know that I have learned so much. So thank you, truly. You guys all have a wonderful day.